Good evening, everyone. If you've landed here, you've landed on Let's Talk News, where we discuss the stories of the day and go behind what the legacy media is talking about, and pick apart their bias. Let's just say that. I'm your host, Leticia Romero, and I thank you for joining us. I hope that you came because you knew about us, but if you stumbled on, please hit subscribe, hit like, place a comment below, and those comments will pop up on the screen. As you can see, we have Kevin Wall from Australia with us. He's the other side of the world, but the same side of the issues. We have Francine from I think Brooklyn or Staten Island. I know it's New York City. Hey, good to have you, Francine. Lucille Chavone is with us, our OG. She's been with us since we were Right Stuff. We're going to talk about JD Vance. He's had a busy week, right? He's got a book out and he's been hitting all the news outlets talking about the book. But it's not just about the book, in my opinion. It's more than the book. If you ask me, he's got his toe in the water to ensure that he's the front runner for the presidential nomination in 2028. I don't think it's an accident. I think it was designed. I kind of know it was designed. And it was done with the blessing of the boss. I don't know. You all saw this little clip, right, that the White House put out.
Hello. I'm the boss. How are you?
Good, thank you.
So that was pick your warrior or something like that. That was making fun of the Democrats. I think it was in 2024. They had a kind of bit where they had members of Congress, mostly women, who were bouncing up and down, pretending to be part of a video game. And most of them are now gone, which is good. But Trump wanted to be compared to Joe Biden. But if you heard him there when he walked into the G7 summit, he made it clear that he was the boss. And many would say, well, that's his ego, and that is his fascist kind of way, his authoritarian self. You know, going in the room full of kings and presidents and leaders. Well, no kings, mostly prime ministers, and declaring that he was the boss of the summit. So they would never think that he would ever share the limelight with anyone. But oddly, he's sharing that limelight a lot with JD Vance. What do you all think? I mean, do you think that it's unusual for a vice president to be this visible on very important issues? I mean, if you remember in the past, the vice presidents were, you know, they attended funerals and, you know, some summits and things, but very rarely did the vice president speak about or speak for the president on issues. And Vance, I mean, he's been in the press, the White House press briefings. He's been doing them since what's her name is out. Oh, why can't I remember her name? She's such a sweetheart. Okay, not Kaylee. I want to say Kaylee McInerney, but I know that's wrong. But anyway, so let's listen to this very important White House press briefing. This is on the Iran MOU. listen to how Vance handles this. And you tell me, would an authoritarian fascist dictator ever share the spotlight and the power with anyone as Vance is actually performing right here? Oh, hi, Andrew Dorman. Good to have you. Watch Vice President Vance.
I think the president's peace plan in Iran is already bearing real fruits for the American people. Last night, 12.5 million barrels of oil went through the Strait of Hormuz. That is a high since the beginning of the conflict. Oil prices are down nearly at their level from the pre-war conflict. Gas prices dropped below $4 a gallon today for the first time since the conflict. And importantly, they're going to keep falling further given how low oil prices are. On the military side, the Iranians, for the second night in a row, did not shoot at any ships in the Strait of Hormuz so far. They are honoring their end of the commitment. And on the blockade, CENTCOM has allowed north of a dozen ships to go through our naval blockade, and so we're also honoring our end of the early part of the agreement. On the military side, a couple of things that are still true and will be true whether the Iranians comply with the rest of the deal or not. Number one, their nuclear program has been completely destroyed. Their capacity for enrichment, the facilities at which they were using to develop enrichment and develop a potential nuclear weapon, those facilities are still destroyed. Their conventional military is still destroyed. Their capacity to threaten their neighbors is still largely gone. And now we see whether they are willing to comply with the next step of the president's peace plan. As you all know, the part of the peace plan, the part of this MOU that I think have been most misrepresented by certain parts of the media is the idea that the Iranians get all these benefits. You will hear things about $300 billion or $24 billion or this or that number of money or amount of money. And the simple fact is that the only way the Iranians get any of those resources, not a single penny, by the way, from the United States of America under any circumstances, but the only way that they would ever get any benefit of the bargain is if they comply fully and change their behavior. And so you really have a win-win situation for the United States of America. If the Iranians don't change their behavior, their military and their nuclear program is still destroyed. If they do change their behavior, then they are going to have a transformative relationship with the Middle East, and the Middle East will have a transformative relationship with the people of Iran. That's a win for the American people and for the President of the United States, regardless of which option the Iranians ultimately choose. We obviously want them to choose the right option. The interesting thing about their system, and I think it's important for the American people to appreciate this point in particular, is that there are real divisions within their country about how exactly to proceed. And what we've seen over the last couple of months is that the pragmatists within the Iranian system, the people who really do want to transform their relationship with the Middle East and with the world, those people are winning the argument. The United States wants those people to win the argument. The United States wants to have a better relationship, but in order for that to happen, the Iranians have to perform. And if they don't perform, as we've said before, they don't get any of the benefits of the bargain. So what I'd ask all of you is just to report honestly that the United States isn't giving up a cent of money to Iran, and even the economic benefits, the sanctions relief and so forth that comes along with this bargain only happens if the Iranians perform. So with that, I want to say thanks to all of you. It's good to be with you this morning, and I'll kick it over to questions. Let's start right over here to the right.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I wanted to ask a follow-up on something you just mentioned. You talked about the possibility of the current Iranian leadership fundamentally changing their behavior. Do you think that the current Iranian leadership recognizes the leverage that the U.S. holds over itself economically and militarily enough to actually go forth with fundamentally changing their behavior over the long term and going about things differently?
So I certainly think they recognize the leverage that the United States has over them. We've seen that in a number of our conversations. We've seen that just in their behavior over the last couple of days. They certainly recognize that the United States has great leverage. Will that ultimately lead to a change in behavior? I don't know. I've seen skeptics of the deal. People say the Iranians will never change their behavior. Well, maybe that's true. And if so, they don't get any of the benefits of the bargain. But isn't it worth trying? Isn't it worth seeing whether this incredibly weakened position that the President of the United States has put the Iranians under, whether that motivates them to change their behavior, not just vis-a-vis the West, but vis-a-vis the Middle East? And one of the interesting things about this is, the technical details of this we can, of course, get into. There are going to be any number of opinions about the negotiation, about where it's ultimately going to go. But I tend to think that you should trust the people who know the Iranians the best and who have the most to lose. What are the Gulf Arab states saying about this deal? What are they saying about this deal compared to the JCPOA in 2015? This is the Obama nuclear deal. Well, back then, they hated that deal. They felt like it empowered the Iranians to be bad actors across the region, and of course, that's exactly what happened. They were right about that. What are they saying about the president's peace deal? They're saying this is an amazingly transformative thing for the region because either way, we and the broader region win. Iran is weakened, their nuclear program destroyed, their economy in desperate straits, and if they change their behavior, big things are going to happen for Iran and for the world. If they don't, no skin off our backs. Either way, we win, and that's the way the president has set up this deal and this negotiation.
So, welcome back, Scott Guest. Good to have you. Barry says I would have liked to see Trump finishing all of Iran military and have the U.S. open the strait ourselves. Let's talk about that for a minute. It's off the subject of President Vance, but while we talk about that comment, think about it. Vance was answering tough questions. Kamala could have never done that for Biden. Biden could have never done that for Biden. But the thing about that about where you stand, Barry, I felt the same way, except for something that Vance said, which is that, there are other nations involved here. And unfortunately, it's not our European allies. See, if it was our European allies, we could have gone in there and finished them off. But that's not what was happening. That asshole, Frenchie, he was rallying the other European nations against us. I was shocked when Italy went against us. I never thought that would happen. I was shocked. So he's rallying them against us because his thought, he's playing footsies with China and Russia. And he's looking for a sweetheart deal for France. And Trump sees that. It was no accident that agreement was signed in Versailles. No accident at all. So without the European nations with us, that's troublesome for us, right? Because we only have so much power. We are a superpower, but are we going to take on everybody? And number two is the Middle East, the rest of those nations in the Middle East. We need to put the dog that is Iran in a cage and keep it in a cage, ready to use it should we need it. The other Middle Eastern countries want Iran around for a reason, not just because they're all Muslim. It doesn't operate that way. They know that they can't get in there at this moment and change the regime. They have all to do to take care of their own countries. So Trump went out on a limb by himself for America and Israel to connect with the rest of the Middle East and to make real long-lasting relationships there, to the detriment of Europe, because Europe is just going to have Russia and China, where the Middle East will have Israel and America. And I think that if I was, as a betting woman, I'd rather have Israel and America. Israel, that tiny little country, has been able to defend itself from all these crazy beasts all around them, right? All these crazy, aggressive countries that want to see them dead. They've been able to hold on for, what is it now? It's almost 100 years, 80 years. So I think that what Trump is doing strategically, long-term, makes sense. You may disagree with that, but that's what I believe, Barry. Scott says that they are all like roaches. It's not that easy, but if that would have been a thing, then I'm sure it would have happened. Yeah, I agree. I mean, you have to be careful, right? Because we're just a little bit tip of the scale, and we're the bad guy. And that's what Macron was trying to do. He was trying to rally Europe to make us the bad guy and to make the alliance go after us. And he almost got it done. So this agreement and having the other countries in the Middle East working with us, I think it leaves France and Italy and Germany and all the allies. It leaves them out with, they've got nothing but their pecker in their hand. You know what I mean? That's my 2 cents. That's kind of how I feel about it. But let's go back. So a fascist dictator, who is a narcissist, is not going to allow FaceTime for a younger, energetic, right, up and coming politician who has a very positive rating from the public to get more airtime on such a big deal. He's almost had as much airtime as Trump has on this deal. I think it's interesting. I think that Trump wants to set up so that it is a Vance Rubio ticket. I'm a Rubio girl still. Rubio's always in the room. He's in the room more than Vance. And that's why I want Rubio as president. But I understand that a lot of times these elections are won on looks and personality and height, believe it or not. Right? Washington became the president of the United States. He was the tallest guy in the room. That's how he became the guy, the general. And that's how he became president. Everybody, he was imposing, he was scary. I don't know that Rubio could pull that off. I'm not sure that Vance can either, but Vance is much younger than Rubio, I believe, and he's got a flourishing family, and he's got a racially mixed family. And I think that Trump feels that he can trust Vance. I'm not saying that he doesn't feel he can trust Rubio, but I think there's a difference between Rubio and Vance. I think that Vance will keep advancing the Trump agenda, where Rubio may just be a little bit too polished for Trump. For me, it's Rubio. I won't cry if it's a Vance Rubio ticket, but I would prefer, in my crazy mind, to have a Rubio Fetterman ticket, because I think the world is changing, and I think America is changing, and I think voters in America are changing, and I think that having a fusion ticket is the way for the Republicans to hold on to the seat in 2028. Again, you could think me crazy, but I'm tired of this ping-ponging back and forth, Republican, Democrat, and there doesn't seem to be an end in sight for that. The last time there was a back-to-back Republican was when Bush after Reagan, and that was a one term. Okay, so Vance was trotting all over the place, and he's been doing the White House press briefing, and he's been getting a lot of press on being in the White House while the president has been around the world. But he also went on The View. So I have some long clips here, but I think that they're worth watching in case you haven't seen it. Here he is with Whoopi Goldberg badgering him about the Trump administration being racist.
You come from a poor community.
Sure.
You know how hard it has been for people. 2 things. You talk a lot about your Catholic faith, but the Catholic faith says we take in immigrants. We take in people who don't have or who are having a hard time. How do you justify both things?
So fundamentally, if you think about what is immigration enforcement, immigration is law enforcement. It's somebody who has broken a law. A law enforcement officer has to show up and enforce that law. Now, inherently, sometimes that process is not always going to be pretty if you capture a video clip of it, in the same way that if you arrest somebody for committing a violent or a nonviolent crime, sometimes it's not always pretty. What I'm saying is the Catholic faith is actually I think it strikes the right balance here. It says, the Christian faith, I think this is true of Protestants and Catholics, that you can have borders.
Yeah.
You're allowed to enforce your borders. That means the law enforcement piece of it. But you also have to take certain precautions and certain care, okay? And again, you know, your argument is fundamentally, Whoopi, you're saying that we don't strike the right balance. I disagree with you about how we apply that, but nobody hopefully is saying we're not allowed to have a border.
No,
what I'm saying is that in order for us to actually enforce the law, you can't set a standard that says you're not allowed to deport anyone unless they've committed a violent crime. You've got to enforce the law equally.
So let me do my follow-up.
You don't have to raise your hand.
Let me do my follow-up.
Yes, I do.
Because you were talking about people. What did black people do to this administration that has allowed it to really stigmatize folks of color? And you know how hard it is. You have family.
Sure.
So when you see, you know, things, the Emmett Till stuff coming down, or them doing all kinds of removal of information of black heroes, how does that sit with you?
Well, what exactly are you talking about, Whoopi? Because you just, I know Emmett Till was the kid. No, I want to know what she's.
You don't know what I'm talking
to your
about.
actual point.
So in a lot of the museums, there's so many. You know, where they're taking down the actual history that happened in this country. Slavery happened. All kinds of stuff happened, and it seems that it has been very easy for this administration to remove that, and also to denigrate black folks who have worked their behinds off to get this American dream. How do you, I mean, you know better.
I think the story you're talking about is where, you know, allegedly the administration is holding back the appointments of people based on skin color. I've seen the story.
I'm talking about a host of things. I'm talking about black history getting erased from public spaces. Black voter districts are being dismantled. Black leaders are being sidelined from our ranks. Where do Americans of color fit in this vision? Because it doesn't seem like we fit.
I think, Sonny, my view.
And if I may, since October of last year, there's been something like 6,668 refugees allowed into the country. All but 3 were white South Africans.
So, first of all, I'm very skeptical of that number because we have a lot of different immigration pathways in the United States of America. But let me just address Whoopi's point. Look, first of all, you asked the question, and maybe you don't believe this coming from me, but I think everybody is welcome in our political coalition. Frankly, even if you didn't vote for us, everybody is welcome in our country so long as you're an American citizen with the duties and the legal obligations and rights to be here. But Whoopi, let me just give you an example of this. Okay, so you say that we're anti-minority or anti-black.
No, I didn't say that. I asked. See?
Well, okay, fine. Fair.
Don't start any stuff with me, man. Don't get me in trouble.
I misinterpreted your question, but let me answer your actual question there. What I'm saying, I think, okay, look at Washington, D.C. One of the most democratic and one of the blackest, by a share of population, blackest cities in the United States of America, has seen a radical decrease in violent crimes and sexual assaults and in murders. We have tried to take the crime issue seriously, in part because we believe everybody, whether you're black or white or rich or poor, deserves to live in a safe neighborhood.
Why does the crime? Where does the crime step in? This is not about crime.
It's not about crime. So what if black kids are getting killed by other black kids? So what if people, you know, black people are more likely to be a victim of a crime than white people. We're not talking about that. We want to talk about race. We want to talk about you being racist. We want to talk about bullshit that we read on the internet that we don't want to look up and make sure that it's true. We're not going to listen to you, Vice President. What would you know? You're just part of the administration. We're going to tell you what the internet told us, and we're going to stand on that. That's what the View interview was like over and over again. I've got more clips, and I'll show you more clips. But I want to know, what do you think? How did he handle himself? Lucille says she always makes it a black issue, but she doesn't even know what the hell she's talking about. Erasing black history. Nobody's erasing black history. Dismantling black congressional districts. Why should there be black congressional districts? All blacks don't think alike. All blacks don't earn the same amount of money. All blacks aren't Democrats. All blacks aren't politically the same. Neither are all whites or all Hispanics. So why should there be a political district based on the color of somebody's skin? There shouldn't. And as a matter of fact, the Supreme Court stated so. That's who's dismantling the districts. The Constitution. The thing that they're all carrying on, oh, Trump is undermining the Constitution. No. You are. Because the Constitution says all men are created equal. You don't write a district based on skin color. You write a district based on all the people being together in one area. They will either be like-minded or they'll have the same issues that are concerning them. Because it's geography. It's not skin color. It's geography. It's not what you have between your legs. It's geography. It's not how you choose to worship. It's geography. They can't figure that out because they are the woke mob. Lucille says it looks like she's a black woman who has been given every opportunity to be on TV daily. Yes, whether she deserves it or not, because she's not. She was a talented actress. Now she's just a griping grandma. And I just don't understand what the hell how she feels like she's been shit on. Hi, Gloria. Good to have you. Here's another interaction. This is talking about children. Listen.
Actually say in the book, you talk about this. You talk about this struggle, this internal struggle in the book, and you talk about moral trade-offs that result in favoring a strict migration policy without dehumanizing anyone. But listen, over 50 people have died in ICE custody. There are thousands of children, 6,200, that are being held in places like Dilley Detention Center. The people that have visited those detention centers, I don't know if you have, talk about the subhuman, infrahuman conditions, the lack of clean water, the lack of medical attention, the lack of education. I would urge you as a Christian and as a father to visit those detention centers where the children are being held and make sure that the conditions are up to the values that we hold in this country.
So you guys have thrown a lot at me, and I see we got 30 seconds left here. But let me say,
You're
number
the Vice
one,
President. You can go long.
I'd like to pick up on this theme because I think it's really important. We do have to strike a balance, of course, between enforcing our laws. We don't want to dehumanize people. That is the balance that, look, law enforcement, what I'd say about this, law enforcement is always inherently not a very pretty process, especially when you're dealing sometimes with violent people, with people who are resisting arrest. Some of the people that I've been told by the media were completely peaceful, had never violated any laws. You actually look into the record and you find out that those people were actually being violent, or they did have a criminal record. They had a sex trafficking conviction.
Don't have criminal records. So the majority of people that ICE is rounding up and taking out of their homes from their families, they're separating families. They're using children as bait. But the majority are not criminals.
But can I respond to that, guys? Let me just say this. Okay. So you talk about the children. Here's what I'd say. Do we know that during the last administration, we had
tens of thousands of children who were sex trafficked by the cartels, who were brought into our country in profoundly dangerous and predatory conditions.
Let's talk about this administration.
But here's the point. Unless you enforce the border, you invite that kind of conduct. You think that our immigration policies are inhumane based on the reporting of one person with a political bias. What I'm telling you is that it's inhumane to allow cartels to sex traffic people across our border.
And by the way, please hold on.
I appreciate that.
Well, we got one of them to admit that there was a great job. But just think about it. Sonny Hostin of The View knows more about the immigration system than the Vice President of the United States. So she thinks. Let's talk about this administration. Let's talk about the kids that were being sex trafficked. Do you see the double talk hogwash? And the audience clapping and clapping and clapping for her. Didn't clap for him, by the way, at all, even when he came out. But that's the hypocrisy. We want to talk about the children being held in detention. Doesn't matter that their parents were using them as a shield or any of that stuff. We want to talk about that. But we don't want to talk about the 300 and some thousand children who were sex trafficked by the previous administration. So keep on my subject, Vice President. Who the fuck? Are you kidding? Are you kidding? Do you think that they talk to Kamala that way? No. Everything Kamala said to them, they ate up like ice cream. And that's the difference. And this is why they are not reporters and nobody should take them seriously. Gloria says, my head keeps saying, shut up, shut up. That audience is ignorant. That audience are useful idiots. And those girls, and I'm going to call them girls because, with all respect, I don't care if Sonny Hostin is a lawyer. I don't know what kind of lawyer she is, but she's a double talker and she's a propaganda spreader. So maybe she's a politician. I don't know. But they are useful idiots for the woke mob. Here he is talking about himself when he did not like Trump. Watch.
I would say fundamentally that one of the things I underappreciated about Donald Trump is that so many of the things that people said about him weren't actually true. Again, you talk about humility. Okay, so I see Donald Trump, I see a clip of him, or I see not even a clip of him, but reporting about something that he said, and I take it at face value. For example, let's just go back to one of the most controversial things Donald Trump said during the first term that I was wrong, during the first campaign, is that I was led to believe by the stories. I read stories that said Donald Trump said that all Mexicans were rapists. He never said that. What he said is that the certain South American countries, Central American countries, were releasing criminals into our country, including Mexico. By the way, that was objectively true. So it's not so much Christians.
Fidel Castro did that in 1980 with the Mariel boat lift. There have been many journalists, including CNN, where you used to work and be my colleague, that have tried to find evidence of that. There is no evidence that Maduro was releasing people from insane asylums or jails like Fidel Castro did do. This was made up, and we just can't, accept it without pushing back.
Anna, we know that there were people who were released from prisons who were encouraged to come into the United States.
It wasn't the Mariel, Mr. Vice President. It wasn't where it was like a purposeful release, open up the jails, open up the insane asylums, and let people flood Florida. I've been through that in Miami.
If you go, it may not have been like Mariel, but if you go back to the caravans that were happening in 22, 23, we know that those things were funded. They were in some ways supported by the government.
There was absolutely
so I don't know how you define support or not support, but if people are encouraged to come into our country after having spent time in prison by their own governments, I think that's a problem.
She's going to push back because she knows better, because she's an investigative journalist. Somebody needs to show me paperwork. Somebody needs to show me that these women actually work. They don't know what the hell they're talking about. They chattered the same information over and over again. She had no answer for that. The government was funding them coming here through fraudulent NGOs. Why were they bringing them here? And of course, they were going to open up the prisons. Was it like what Castro did to say F you America and open up all the insane asylums? Yeah. Because Let me ask you something. China was going to let people just come to the United States and work here instead of in China? No. Come on. For you to get out of these governments, you need some cash. They didn't have cash. These people didn't have cash unless somebody gave them cash. We gave it. We funded. The taxpayers of America funded NGOs that gave them cash. And who did they send? They didn't send their best and their brightest. Why would the government send their best and their brightest? Remember, we're talking about authoritative dictators. We're talking about fascist dictators, authoritarian governments. They're going to just let their best and brightest walk out. See, I 2020 hindsight, right? But I mean, these women are not using their heads. They're not even using their hearts, because if they were, they'd be concerned for those 300,000 children, 200,000 of which are still out there and we don't know where. And they'd wonder why. Why would their government that they're protecting, their former government, why would they do such a thing? Why would Biden do such a thing? Why would Kamala do such a thing? Good night, Andrew Dorman. All right, here's the last clip. I know we ran over. Maybe you want to see him on Gutfeld. This is about the book and Christianity.
Where did you find time to write this?
So I actually started writing it back in 2017. So I've just been writing it for a long time and finally figured, it's time to, or get off the pot, because I'm never going to publish this thing if I don't do it now.
Yeah.
But I'm actually going to change the subtitle. It's currently Finding My Way Back to Faith. The new subtitle is going to be I hung out with Gutfeld an hour and now I'm going to hell, because that's what I've learned. But I mean, it's like not a, and this, we talked about this on The View with the ladies of The View.
Yeah.
And it's not like a politics book.
Right.
There's a little bit of politics because I'm the Vice President of the United States, but it really is a story about how I lost my faith, how I was raised Christian, lost my faith, but came back to it. And really the hope is twofold. Number one, if you're going through a similar journey, maybe that story can be helpful to you. But also, like, as a father, I've got 3 little kids and we've got a 4th on the way. I'm very interested. Thank you, guys. I'm very interested in why kids fall away from their faith to begin with, and how we can do a better job as Christian parents and Christian communities to sort of keep people rooted in the faith, right? Kids are going to make mistakes. Kids are going to do stupid things. But I think that we have a problem in the Christian communion, in our country, in the world, where we really care about this stuff as parents. Too many of our kids, it doesn't take. And I'm trying to think through that a little bit as a father.
It is interesting because, like, there's a when you try to prove something exists, you see whether there is a desire for it. So the proof of water is your thirst. The proof of food is your hunger. And within everybody is a desire for a spiritual connection. They want to know where they came from, which leads one to believe that it exists.
That's right.
It exists, and yet at some point we steer people away from seeking that question, and you end up with data saying huge levels of depression and mental illness because life without meaning is horrifying.
That's absolutely right. And a famous philosopher once said, when you stop believing in God, you don't believe in nothing, you believe in anything. And I think there's a deep truth to that, because, who can look at progressive atheistic culture and say, like, for example, if you believe that Jesus is the Son of God, rose from the dead on the 3rd day, there are a lot of progressives who will say, you're a crazy person, you believe in superstitions. And those same people will tell you that if a grown man takes some hormonal therapies that Big Pharma told them to take, that person will become a woman. It's like, actually, you believe something that's far crazier and clearly a violation of nature. Mm-hmm. And I think that there is this deep sense of purpose and meaning that everybody's seeking. And I think what's great, obviously I'm a Christian, so I'm going to say this, but what's great about Christianity is it's a healthy way to find meaning. But if you try to find all of your meaning in politics, or you try to find all of your meaning in worldly things, I think it has a very distorting effect. And again, that's like part of how I found my way back to faith.
So what do you think? Do you think that he's auditioning for the role of President of the United States? And do you think that Donald Trump is encouraging him? Let me know in the comments. I thank you for joining me for this week and these episodes. I think that we've had an interesting week, and we've gone behind the scenes of the media and how they didn't report very much on the terror plots at the UFC. How it looks like the NYPD might just be a little bit off track when it comes to those guys in the manholes, and so we have to be vigilant. How these lefty lunatics are trying to sell to people that because Elon Musk is a trillionaire, somehow they're poorer. These are the things that happened this week, and these are the things that are really destroying our country. So on the bright side, is JD Vance going to be your president in 2028, or your choice for president in 2028? Or are you holding out for someone else? Think about it. Let me know. I will see you on Tuesday, and we'll have some clips and some shorts, I'm sure, if anything comes up over the weekend. Thank you all for joining me, and I will see you on Tuesday. Let's talk news.